I got into product management a little bit by brute force. I was working at a company called Metadata. They were a B2B SaaS company that had been pretty successful at the point I started. They were 500 employees, had been around for 9 years. But even given that, their product management function, given that title, the function really was project management and business analysis, requirements and keeping the train on the rails. Wasn't a lot of market analysis at all. There was very little of that going on from the product function. After being there for a year, the EVP of marketing within that organization sold to the C-level folks that she should take over the function because she could get more out of us than the company currently was. That was basically the main selling point. And I would imagine she went into detail about how she will do that. I was not privy to those conversations, so I'm making some assumptions here. But the impact that had on me was the expectation of my job changed pretty drastically from just being responsible for documentation of system requirements and project management, meaning timelines, resources, and scope, and that triangle, and how pushing one pushes one of the others or both. And there's just no two ways about that. It's just simple science in project management. To now, the expectation was you're going to be market researchers. You're going to need to understand things like what our customers and marketplace actually expect of this company, and the ultimate game being so we can create products that will be super compelling, that allow us to sell to more customers and command a higher price point by having a greater value proposition. And that was a big undertaking for us. Most of us just did not really have that background. Some of the product people that were at Metadata had been there for years. This was their first product role. This was my first product role, or at least with that title. So we learned a couple of key things through her just training us, changing the expectations, but also on the job, and even sort of pseudo classroom-based training that she gave us. I'd say the key learnings that we were given were how to set up advisory boards, so setting them up, attracting people to them, maintaining them in a way that people will continue to want to come, because if they stop coming, obviously that's no good. And the other thing is you don't want to have an advisory board that has a lot of turnover in it, where you're constantly introducing new people every other session. It doesn't work as well. You really do want some consistency, and she made that point very clear, that you need to run this in a way that relatively speaking, the same group shows up at least for every other meeting, if not every. So there was that advisory boards. The other thing she taught us how to do, which was super interesting, and actually one of the hardest things we needed to really learn, was how to analyze win-loss analysis. And that was fantastic in that, luckily, we weren't expected to conduct the win-loss analysis. Metadata was a big enough company with a large enough budget where they had hired a third-party company to do that, which I think is actually the optimal way to do it, because when you hire a third-party company to actually perform that analysis, it's usually completely unbiased. They don't talk about who they're doing the analysis for. They just said, I'm an industry analyst, and I just want to talk to you about the buying process for these solutions. And they talk about you and your competitors, but they don't know who they're really being sponsored by. So the feedback you get and the data you get should be unbiased, which I love, and I love that part of it. But the amount of data you get out of these things is extraordinary. It can be overwhelming. That was one. She taught us how to look at this data, and remember, this win-loss analysis was not being conducted just for product management, not at all. It's being conducted for marketing. It was being conducted for the benefit of sales. It was being conducted for the benefit of the C-level. It's being conducted even somewhat for the benefit of the client success function as well. There are plenty of groups that can take advantage of win-loss analysis, for sure. So as product people, we needed to understand what to focus on. There was too much data to consume it all. So it was, here are the parts of these reports that I really want you to focus on. That was helpful. But also the even greater learning was how to interpret it, right? That's the art to it, is what does it really mean? And it can be scary. You could see some win-loss reports that are the accumulation of 10 prospects, feelings on your product, and you see 10, it's a relevant number. That's a good number of prospects to have data on. And it can freak you out, and it can make you just like want to either A, jump out a window, or completely change your roadmap immediately, because clearly you do not have a product that is designed to sell right. And you know, it's more of a, okay, deep breath moment, relax. Let's really think about what this means in terms of, does it mean we need to modify our roadmap? And that's fine. That doesn't mean you shouldn't, but it also doesn't mean that, oh my God, your roadmap is totally wrong, because that's just one of many forces that should push on your roadmap and impact it. So don't just assume that, you know, this is the most important thing that you're ever going to see. And it's often that it can be compelling to do so because it's such rich data, right? And everyone's, you know, sort of historically has been trained to think data doesn't lie. You know, the numbers are so powerful. But I think a smart product person recognizes that, yeah, you could get great data, you can get rich data, but let's just keep it simple and say, okay, 50% is data, and the other 50% is the art of kind of interpreting that data, and also just leveraging like the deep and meaningful conversations you have with subject matter experts, and using that as part of the art that goes into it. And I say the last part of, you know, the three-prong approach she gave us to product was a competitive analysis, trying to discern what our competitors were actually doing, to determine and look at that and say, okay, do we need to worry about it? Oftentimes it's no. Okay, don't just assume. She was really good at one thing. She told us something that I found very fascinating is, we have to have faith. It basically said, have faith in yourself more than your competition. There's no evidence that your competition does product management better than you do. So just because you see they're about to release something doesn't mean they know what they're doing. Doesn't mean that they've done what you know should be done in order to analyze that as a potential input to your roadmap. However, it also doesn't mean you should ignore it either. And her point was, take that as one of the many inputs of a possible idea that you should consider for your roadmap. And then just put it through the typical paces and the typical product management ideation funnel that you have. Don't treat it any differently. It's just another idea. And if you put it through that lens of just like any other idea, it'll keep you safe. Right? Just because your competitors are doing it, a lot of people, again, see that and jump and get scared and mean, oh God, that's another box they can check off on a, you know, RFP chart that, you know, oh, that could be a big issue for us. Don't assume that. Just put it through the paces, put it through your normal process, and you should come out the other end with the right answer. After 5 years at Metadata, 4 of them as a true product person, and moving up the ranks within Metadata from a sole contributing product person into a management position. And that management position included a couple of different roles by the time I departed Metadata. So I was responsible for, obviously, the product management function, but also business analysts and project management. So there's a lot. There's a lot of forces pulling on me, and I learned quickly there's a big challenge to being responsible for both project management and product. It's hard, no doubt. Now, an opportunity came my way after being at Metadata for those 5 years for me to run my own product function. And it was super interesting to me because it was an organization that the way they described where they were, it reminded me of Metadata when I started, that they had a product function, and what the product function was really doing was project management and business analytics, and that's all. They weren't doing any market analytics. They said to me, they're looking for someone to change that, someone to come in and basically fix that and turn our product management function into a market research function on top of the other 2 functions. And I said to myself, wow, like I've been through that. I've seen that transformation. And having gone through it, I definitely think I'm well poised to take that on. And I wanted to take that on. I thought that was a great opportunity to, you know, transform an organization, mature that function, with the end game being, yeah, just like my EVP at Metadata felt, I can definitely help them get much more value out of their product function. Yes, I want to take that challenge on, so I did. It was not a long stint there. It was all 10 months. And then they were financially struggling almost the entire time I was there, unfortunately, which added a lot of stress to the job. But at the end of the day, it also resulted in me getting laid off. So that became a relatively short stint. Still very interesting. In those 10 months, I definitely learned a lot about what type of environments I like. That company, that organization was larger, more corporate in nature, as opposed to Metadata, even though it was 500 people. Still had a more of a startup feel, while my second company had a larger company feel at 1,300 employees. And the culture was just different. So it was a good cultural learning for me. After my next job after that was heading up the product function for a facilities management SaaS platform. And that too was just heading up the function. But it was it was a new thing to me. And what was new was they had no product managers at all. They had no product management to speak of other than, the CTO and CEO wearing those hats. And not doing it in a way that was really organized. It was very much based on, what last important client did we speak to and what idea did they have, and that seemed to find its way to bubble up to the top of the roadmap. The president of the company was not one of the founders, who was brought in within about a year before I started, realized that they needed organized product management. That's why they were seeking that skill set. But I would be the first person. And I took the job knowing that there would be no one else to help me. And that meant I'd have to, the roll up the sleeves attitude of, you're going to be a one-man show. And part of being that one-man show is going to be proving the value of the function to the organization. And if you do so, then we will give you the budget to hire people to help. Because they were smart enough to recognize that I think at the time I started, they had somewhere in the ballpark of 35 software engineers, not including QA, just software engineers. It's a lot of bodies. And if you understand the simple, general ratios, you recognize that, no, they never expected one person to be able to cover all 35 engineers. And luckily, that wasn't the expectation either. They were very clear that, look, what we're going to ask you to do is, kind of play the role of like primary product person on a portion of the product portfolio. Take that on, show us why what you do is so awesome, and then we'll just grow the team. That's pretty much exactly what happened after about 6 months there. I had done a couple of key things, such as standing up an advisory board, having a very well-defined roadmap that also I could defend with both a combination of data from the advisory board and surveying them on what their key initiatives were and what order they wanted those initiatives done, and then bringing that together into like a singular list with some kind of rich data on the priorities our most important, largest, and diverse customers had. I also integrated sales needs into that, of course. Also the thoughts of some key subject matter experts within the company that had been there for a while and really had their finger on the pulse of both our customers / marketplace, and even some of them, the sales component of how do we onboard more customers. And they weren't hurting for customers either, which was great. It was interesting. It was a smallish company in that 90 employees when I started, but they did have 120 unique customers and some of the biggest brands, retail and restaurant brands on the planet. We know them all, okay? Brands everyone has heard of. And I was impressed by that. They'd done a lot of good things over a 12-year period. They had an interestingly slow growth. So that the challenge there was to start standing up things that I thought would be meaningful to the executives of the company, so I could grow the team. Because I knew I couldn't, get the maximum value out of the product function without more people to help me. There's no way. I told you 35 engineers. There's no way I could do all of it. But I was able to get at least a high level roadmap that was designed to talk about the things like here are the ideas or the roadmap to really move the needle. And by move the needle, I mostly meant increase revenue by a combination of course, selling the core product to new prospects, but also upselling existing customers. And in fact, through my research, I definitely learned that this was a company that was in the phase with their 120 unique clients. They needed to spend more effort selling more software to their existing customers rather than putting effort into the roadmap to acquire new customers. And the reason for that was pretty simple. When I went to sales and I asked them what they needed from the product to sell more, typically the answer was, I can sell what you have. I was lucky. I mean, it's a rare place to be. But you can imagine, after 12 years of existence, yeah, that's a lot of dollars that have been put into this product. Yes, it worked. Yes, it did what it needed to do. After 12 years, they had hammered out all of the obvious needs for the core product, and it could sell. And the sales team was regularly telling me, if anything, they just wanted it to look better UX was an issue. That was our number one issue. And we definitely put that on the roadmap to take care of that. Outside of that, and then I said, okay, well, if that's not the challenge in front of this company, then this opens up opportunities where we should then leverage these fantastic relationships that we have with our existing customers to open up their wallet more and sell them more software, because, and you look at varying, surveys, but it's usually anywhere from, 1/4 to 1/5 the cost to sell to an existing customer than acquire a new one in the SaaS world. So if you do that math, okay, that's a compelling reason to sell software to your existing customers. It's so much easier. It's so much less pain. So if you could sell them, think of it this way, sell them, 50% more dollars worth of software at, let's say, 1/4, 1/5 the cost of acquiring 100% to a new prospect, do the math, and you will come out on top by selling more software to your existing customers. And also the other thing is, the more software you sell to your existing customers, the retention tends to go up, simply because they start using even more capabilities, and it gets stickier, and it gets even more harder for them to unwind and leave you and go to a competitor. So it also has a retention benefit as well, to be able to get them to use more capabilities. Yeah, it's got a dollar effect, but it's also got a retention effect, which is fantastic. So one of the first things I told that company was, we need to stop giving away software for free, because that's what they had been doing over the previous or actually forever. But I really did a deep dive into what they had done release-wise in the previous 3 years. They'd done some really interesting things, some cool modules that they had released, and just included it in the base price, basically giving it away for free. And I said, that's crazy. No more. We're not giving away software for free. So pretty much everything we do, we're going to charge for. And if we can't charge for it, then I'm going to question why we're doing it. And if we can charge for it, awesome. And we'll make sure that we can charge enough for it to make sense, and we can make good money off of it. And that, it's a viable product, of course, through, putting it through the funnel and all the vetting and analysis. But I really did put my foot down, and it was a battle with the C-level to really get them to agree with me that, yes, we can ask for more money from existing customers. They had a very, especially the CEO, had a great fear of price increases for any reason whatsoever, including selling them more capabilities. Nonetheless, price increases just for like annual increases of like, typical 5 to 7%, which is fairly fine and normal. And he didn't even want to do that. So the thought of like charging them 25%, 25% more for a whole new capability, for reasons I couldn't always get my head around, made him nervous. But I said to him, look, let me do the research. Let me prove that this will work before we do it. I'm not saying just trust me. And my conversations pretty quickly yielded with the members of my advisory board as a starting point, that as I brought up certain capabilities, would you be willing to pay for it? It was pretty clear that the answer was, of course we are. Okay, these are big companies with deep pockets, and as long as there's value there, they're not afraid to pay for value. And in fact, it was hilarious. I remember distinctly, it was 3 of them out of a total of, let's say, 10 that I think I spoke to about this, that jokingly said to me, yeah, I'm surprised you haven't been charging me more for years. Okay, you've been giving me so much free stuff that I've just been waiting for this moment to come, and I think it's totally fair. Okay, it's good that they have you. It's better for business. And I was like, whoa, it's a little bit of whiplash for me. But I appreciated their honesty, that they recognize that this is normal. So I think that covers, and then, okay, so my last step of my journey to bring me where I am now. I left Service Channel after about a 3-year stint there. It was great. It wasn't a situation of anything went wrong. The simple reason I wanted to try something new was Service Channel's roadmap, and this was my doing in large part, and I didn't get any disagreement ultimately after really talking it through with the business. It was a lot of the product opportunities that they should get into based on all the market forces and feedback from existing customers and prospects and sales, showed that the best way to approach let's say acquiring, for lack of a better word, those capabilities was through acquisition, not building it ourselves. Go out, buy companies. There are tons of companies that already do it. It's a crowded marketplace. There are plenty of places that, ways to go and acquire. The reason for that is we didn't have expertise in those disciplines. They were related to our discipline, but it still was a separate part of the process that our people, I wasn't familiar with it. My people, my team, client services wasn't familiar with it. Sales wasn't familiar with it. It wasn't a function, a customer-facing function in the company that had expertise in it. And to me, that's risky, right? You can go out and try to hire those people, but when you don't have the expertise, how do you even know that you're hiring people with expertise, right? You need an expert to hire an expert in a way. So I looked at it and said, now, you know what we should do? We should acquire companies that specialize in this, that have the people and the product in place and do it that way. It's much less, it's more expensive, but it's less risky. And they agreed. And then as I looked at the roadmap for the next potentially few years worth of ideas that we had, 80% of them were in the vein of acquisition. And that's a very different role for a product person. I'm a build guy. I had only built, for the most part, some partnerships, of course. We definitely done partnerships and integrations, but that was the minority of the work I was doing. The vast majority was building it myself, and I didn't want to be spending 80% of my life going out into marketplaces, analyzing companies, looking at their product, and then picking off, a menu of options, whittling it down to 3, and then whittling it down to 1, and then, then having to integrate that product. And basically, then my job after that just becomes about integrating one product into another, excuse me, and merging the UX. Not as interesting to me. It's just not me. I know people love that, and they think that's like the coolest thing ever, and that's good for them. It's just not my passion. So we had a very amicable parting, and I then looked at my life and realized I had been working for full-time companies for my entire career, and I wanted to give consulting a shot. That's what I've been doing for the past year and a half.